والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا رشدنا يا رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah, in our discussions on متن Al-Ajurrumiyya على صاحبها أفضل Salam wa tahiyyat. We've reached the section where he is discussing all of the marfu' nouns, all of the marfu'at. And we mentioned before the list of the marfu'at, right, which is definitely something to put to memory, right, to memorize all of those words which are marfu'. You'll find in different styles, it'll memorize it different ways. Right? Some people will just memorize it, right, as a list, but you may find even like a poem just to memorize the marfu'ats. Right? So if you are following along with the nazm of Ajurrumiyya, the poem of Ajurrumiyya, right, you want to pick out certain sections that will be. Right, so you memorize all the marfu'ats, all the mansubat, all the majrurat, you pretty much have everything, right, and then just understand the theory that's been discussed. Right, that would be more than sufficient. Right, so just to recall, right, he mentioned that the marfu'at are 7. Right, al-fa'ilu wal-maf'ulu, al-fa'ilu and the na'ib fa'il, the substitute doer. Right. The reason why I said maf'ul is because in some text you'll find that it says al-maf'ulu ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu, right, the object whose fa'il is not mentioned. Right. That's another way of saying na'ib al-fa'il. The mubtada and the khabar, which we'll be taking today, the subject and the predicate, right, ismu kana wa akhawatuha, the noun of kana and its sisters, right, khabaru inna wa akhawatuha, the predicate of inna and its sisters, and then the corresponding nouns, which technically is not a marfu' in and of itself, but because of the other 6. Right, so we took last week the fa'il and the na'ib fa'il. So just to reiterate, every single verb needs a fa'il. Right, every single verb has to be ascribed, the action itself has to be ascribed to someone, because actions don't just appear out of nowhere. So the action is either ascribed to a doer who is known, right, which is going to be either a pronoun within the verb itself or an ism zahir, an apparent noun after the verb. Now, we mentioned before that the fa'il has to be either in the verb or after. It can never be before it. And that's going to come up today. It'll come up more when we talk about the mansubat, right? Those nouns which are mansub. Right, so the fa'il, right, if the action is ascribed to a doer who is known, it's called the fa'il. Right? If the action is ascribed to a doer who is not known, right, then it's called the na'ib fa'il. Right, so if I said qutila zaydun, Zayd was killed. Right, so the action is ascribed to someone unknown, so Zayd takes its place. So technically the object takes its place. That's why it's called also al-maf'ulu ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu. Right, the maf'ul of that which, that verb whose fa'il is not mentioned. It takes the place of the fa'il. And today is the mubtada and the khabar, right, the subject and the predicate, right, which will allow us now to truly understand the 2 types of sentences in Arabic, which is the jumla ismiyya, the nominal sentence, a sentence that starts with a noun, and the jumla fi'aliyya, which is the verbal sentence, the sentence that starts with a verb. Right, so as we'll go, we have some practice at the end that we want to do from the Qur'an, where you'll see how they mix together, the jumla ismiyya and the jumla fi'aliyya, the nominal and the verbal sentences. So the mubtada and the khabar. Al-mubtada'u wal-khabaru. Mubtada comes from the word ibtida', which means to begin. And that will come up as well. And khabar is a news. Right? Khabar is a news. Right, so when you say Zayd is tall, that tall is the news that you're ascribing to Zayd. right? But to define each, right, the mubtada is al-ismu al-marfu' al-'ari 'an al-'awamil al-lafdhiyya. It is that noun which is marfu' and it's free of any governing agents before it that are mentioned in word. That are mentioned in word before it. Right? And this idea of the amil, the governing agent, is important. Right? So for instance, if I said yaf'alu zaydun, Zayd is doing. Right? Why, if someone asked you why is Zayd marfu'? Why is Zayd marfu'? Yaf'alu zaydun. Because it has a dhamma, but what made it marfu' is the question. What? Yaf'alu zaydun. It's the fa'il, right? So Zayd is the fa'il, all fa'il are marfu', but what made it marfu'? The agent really is the verb before it, because it's the fa'il of the verb. So had that verb not been there, right, it would be nothing. It would just be Zayd. Right, so the governing agent is really what's before it, what role it plays, and what before that which comes before it affects it. Right, so the mubtada being the first word in the sentence, right, there's nothing before it. Right, so there is no governing agent mentioned before it. That's why the reason why the mubtada is marfu' is because of ibtida, because it's the first word. Right? Not because of a specific word before it that causes it to be marfu'. So that's a technical issue. Right? That some books, they go to really deep details about what makes the mubtada marfu'. So some said that the khabar is marfu' because of the mubtada, which is exactly what we're about to say, right? And the mubtada is marfu' because of the khabar. It's a dual relationship, right? But it doesn't have many practical implications in your grammar studies. But al-ibtida is the reason why the mubtada is marfu', because it's the first word. And the default in all nouns is marfu' until proven otherwise. Right? So you need other words to enter in order to make a noun mansub or majroor. You need something to enter upon it. Whereas default, right, it's marfu'. So you say al-Rahman. What's the al-Rahman 'allama al-Qur'an? What's the vowel on the end of al-Rahman? Dhamma, right? It's the first word is a noun, it's marfu', it's mubtada. So, now the khabar is wal ismul marfu' al musnadu ilayhi. It is an ism that is marfu', a noun that is marfu', which is ascribed to the subject, which it goes back to the subject. Right? Now, in some texts, you'll see that the mubtada is called the musnad. Right? The word to which the khabar is ascribed, is describing. Right? And then the musnad ilayhi is the khabar. And there's a reason why they do that, but it's sufficient to say that mubtada and khabar. Right? That the khabar gives a news about the mubtada, the subject. Now, can you go in my office and grab my bag? Yeah. So, and the mubtada and the khabar, we'll talk about in a minute, but they have to match, they have to correspond. Right? Because if the khabar is giving news about the mubtada, it has to correspond to the mubtada. Right? So if the mubtada is singular, the khabar has to be singular. If the mubtada is feminine, the khabar has to be feminine. There's one exception, right? But there has to be this correspondence. Jazakallah khair. So then they break it down into types, and this is where we want to really break it down, because this is very practical, and we're going to use this, so really keep your thinking caps on. We're going to use this in the end of the class and apply it. So, right, the mubtada itself, right, just like the fa'il, can either be ism dhahir, an apparent noun, right, like zaydun or waraqun or kitabun, right? Or it can be a pronoun. It can be a pronoun. You can say, huwa tawilun, he is tall. Hiya, right, tawilatun, she is tall. Right. Later we'll talk about that the ism dhahir, right? It can be mu'awwal, right? It can be manifested in a different way, not necessarily a specific noun, but even a sentence of sorts. Right? And tasumu khayrun lakum, right? For you to fast is better for you. Right? It's the same sentence structure. For you to fast is better for you. Right? And tasumu khayrun lakum is actually as if you're saying sawmukum khayrun lakum. Your fasting is better for you. So there are different manifestations of ism dhahir. That's a bit out of the scope of this text, but just to know it is important. The second is the pronoun, right? Huwa, qul huwa Allahu ahad, right? Huwa, innahu ala kulli shayin qadir. So you can have the pronoun, right? The mubtada being a pronoun, right? So the dhahir, right? We already explained what the dhahir is, right? So that it's going to be a noun, right? Just any regular noun, right? But the pronoun, right? We haven't really touched on pronouns, right, to full extent, right? We've mentioned them in passing. We've mentioned the unattached pronouns, huwa, huma, hum, hiya, huma, hunna, anta, antuma, antum, anti, antuma, antunna, ana, and nahnu. But there are attached versions of nouns, and we have a printout, inshallah, to give everyone. There's just one slide that has the pronouns on it. Can you just bring that? So we'll take that in a moment, right? Technically there are 14, right? But you'll find that in many of the commentaries they say 12, right? Because huma is repeated multiple times, so they just make that one, right? So he, she, they, all of those are pronouns. So you can say nahnu muslimun, we are Muslims. The first word, right, of the sentence is it a noun or a verb? Nahnu muslimun. It's a noun. Is nahnu a noun? Is it? It's a pronoun. Yes, it's a noun, right? It's a type of noun. Right, so pronouns are nouns, right? And actually pronouns are more definite than nouns. Right? For you to say he is more specific than for you to say Zayd, because there could be more than one Zayd. Right? The same thing applies for the khabar, right? However, it breaks down slightly different. Right? So the khabar has two types. Right? There's one is mufrad, it's an individual noun. Right? So Zaydun tawilun. Zayd is tawil. Zayd is tall. Right? Or it can be other than an individual noun, because the khabar, as opposed to the mubtada, can actually be a full sentence. The khabar can be a full sentence. Right? So I can say Zaydun qa'imun. Right? Zayd is standing, or I can say Zaydun qama. Zayd stood. Zaydun yaqumu. Zayd is standing. I can use a verb as the khabar, right? Al-Rahmanu allama al-Qur'ana. Right? The most merciful, he taught the Qur'an. Right? So that allama al-Qur'an is a jumla fi'aliyah, which becomes the khabar. So let me, the next slide explains what does it mean by other than the mufrad, right? Other than the individual noun, right? So the khabar can manifest in 4 different ways. There's 4 types of khabar. Bad timing. Right, so the first is that the khabar can be jar majroor, ism harf jar, right, and a majroor. See, how do I get this out of here? Okay. Right, famous example. Okay, what does the sentence start with? Noun or a verb? A noun. Good. Right, so any sentence that starts with a noun, that noun is automatically what? A mubtada. So right, so it's mubtada, it's marfu'. The sign that it's marfu' is that there's a dhamma clearly, right, on the end of it. Right, now we have lillahi, which was li, harf jar, and then Allahi. Right, but there's idgham, they became together. Right, so what is li? Harf jar, or khaft, if you would rather. Right, and then the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is ism majroor. Right, and it's important to say that instead of saying Allah is majroor, there's an etiquette in the Arabic, right? That lafzul jalala, that the name of majesty, or that the name Allah is majroor. That's better etiquette instead of saying. Right, so now these two become what? The khabar. Okay, good. Right, so now this is actually permitted. You can do it like this. Right, but there is a deeper problem there, because the khabar is the khabar a noun or a verb? Is the khabar supposed to be a noun? Yeah, it's supposed to be a noun, but is this a noun, the harf jar? No. So there is effectively there's something, right, assumed to be there, something that's missing. So when I say Zaydun fid dar, Zayd is in the house. Right, what does that mean? What do I mean by that in English? Zayd is present in the house. Good. Right, he's not in the walls. Right, so Zaydun, it's as if I'm saying Zaydun mawjudun fid dar. So that would be, right, technically these would be, right, muta'alliq to mawjud. But you don't have to do that. Right, that fid dar is just explaining mawjud. Right, Zayd is present where? In the house. Right, but you can, right, you're allowed to just say fid dar is the khabar. Right, and many of the scholars have said that that is one of the correct interpretations. Right, but it's important to understand that, because when defining alhamdulillah, all praise is for Allah. What do you mean? Somebody said, what do you mean by that? All praise is for Allah. Right. What does it mean? Anyone? Belongs, right? So that, right, for meaning belongs to. Right, so alhamdu mustahiqun lillah. Right, so there's always something assumed there. Right, and there's more. It could be alhamd is only for Allah. Right, or alhamd is belongs to Allah, as you said, right? So you'll see that the Arabic lends itself to great nuances because of that. Right? So just the meaning of Bismillah itself is really great.
It could be like any assumed word, not just mawjud.
It could be any verb or a derivative verb, because the harf jar majroor, they become connected to anything that is either a verb or one of its derivatives, like ism fa'il, ism maf'ul, ism tafdil. Right, all of the derivative nouns of the verb. Right. Tamam. Right, so the khabar can be harf jar majroor. You can just say that's khabar. Mubtada khabar, that makes jumla ismiya. Right, mubtada and khabar make jumlatun ismiyatun, right? A nominal sentence. Ismiya meaning, right, coming from ism, jumla ismiya. So the second type is the dharf, right? The dharf, and this is new, right? We haven't did this in the previous class those who are attending the previous book. We haven't really gone into this too much. We did go into the muta'alliq. I'm sure you remember that. But there are some words that are not harf jar, but they do act kind of like them, right? Like for instance, ma'a. What does ma'a mean? With. Right? How about inda? Inda is tough to translate. Is by, right? By or with or regarding, or right? A type of possession. Right, so if I said, for instance, Zaydun ma'a Ahmadin, Ahmada. Anyone want to know why it's Ahmada, not Ahmadin? غير منصرف, right? It's a name and it's wazn fi'al. It's a form of the pattern of a verb. Right, so Zayd here is what? Sentence starts with a noun, first noun becomes mubtada. Straightforward, right? Right, and this is ism zahir, right? So one of the types of mubtada is a name. I could say huwa ma'a Ahmad, and that could also be the mubtada. Right, so Zaydun ma'a Ahmad, mubtada. Ma'a is, anyone? Technically, yeah. So ma'a is a verb, an adverb, right? And we take those a little bit later. There's adverbs that indicate the time, right? Like al-yawm, today, right? Daraba Zaydun Ahmadan al-yawm. Zayd hit Ahmad today, right? I have money today. What is that today? It's an adverb. It just modifies the sentence to add more detail, right? And then there's adverbs of place, right? In front of me, behind me, near me, right? With me, right? Those are all. So, but ma'a acts like mudaf ilay, right? Mudaf, and this becomes mudaf ilayhi, and that becomes your khabar, right? So, right, ma'a Ahmad. Ahmad is what state? Is it mansub, marfu' or majrur? Majrur, good, right? Right, so the khabar here is al-dharf. It's a word that expresses time or place. It's an adverb. Right, and again, you could say that, right? Zaydun mawjudun ma'a Ahmad. And that would apply as well. So inna ma'al usri yusran. Verily, with ease is right? Or with difficulty is ease, right? That's the khabar. So if I said Zaydun indaka, Zayd is with you. Right? Indaka is the khabar. Right? Zaydun fid dar. Again, that's harf jar. Right. So you would just say that this is the dharf, right, which is the khabar. Yeah, but this is not harf jar. It's not harf jar, but it acts like a mudaf, and mudaf ilayh is always majrur. We'll take that when we get there, and why it's always majrur. The third type is, the next two types are, the khabar can be a whole sentence. The khabar can be a whole sentence. And we see this all throughout the Qur'an. Right? I'm going to erase this, if it's okay. Bismillah, Allah. Right, so if I were to say, for instance, another verse of the Qur'an, al-Rahman. Does everyone have the chart that we gave last week of the verbs? Ar-Rahman, right? The sentence starts with a noun. The noun is what? If a sentence starts with a noun, what is that first noun called? The mubtada, right? Mubtada is marfu', mansub, or majroor? Marfu'. So Ar-Rahman, nu, right? But now, right, once I see mubtada, right, what you can do is, you know that that after that you're looking for that there's a break. You're looking for your khabar. Right? As soon as you find your mubtada, you're looking for your khabar. Right? But now you come across the verb. Right? Whenever you come across the verb, what do? Right? What does a verb have to have? A fa'il. Where is the fa'il? It's hidden, right? It's huwa, the pronoun huwa, which is inside. Right? Huwa is the fa'il. Right? And then some fa'il, some verbs, they need a maf'ul as well. Right? So, right, this is our first mansub. We haven't really gone to mansubs yet. Right? The maf'ul is always mansub. Right? Kullu maf'ulin mansub. Every maf'ul is mansub until the day of judgment. Fi'al plus fa'il plus maf'ul equals jumla fi'aliyah. Am I done? Is my sentence finished? Fully analyzed? No, why? Right, poor mubtada, still lonely. Right? He needs to be completed by the khabar. Right? That becomes jumla ismiya. So now, if someone asked you, what's the khabar of this sentence? What would you say? Allama al-Qur'ana, the whole sentence. The whole sentence is a khabar. Now the mubtada can't be a whole sentence. The mubtada has to be a noun. Right? If it's mu'awwal, right, then there's more room. Right? But a khabar is special because a khabar can be a noun, it can be a verb, it could be a whole sentence, it could be harf jar, majroor, it can be a dharf. So the khabar has a lot more leeway. So, Ar-Rahmanu mubtada, Allama al-Qur'ana khabar, Khalaqa al-insana second khabar, Allamahu al-bayan third khabar. So you can have more than one khabar. You can have more. I can say Zaydun, Tawilun, Qadimun, Jamilun. Zayd is tall, he's old, he's handsome. Whatever. I can have many descriptions of the subject. Much news to give to the same subject. So, if you wanted to have more than one mubtada, you'd have to use a conjunction, wa. So Zaydun wa Amrun muslimani. Zayd and Amr are Muslims. Right, so you can do that, but you can't have them in one word. They're not going to be in one word. You'd have to have a conjunction to add them. You can't just say Zayd Amr, Zayd Ahmed. You have to say Zayd wa Ahmed. Whereas you can say in Allahu Ghafoor Rahim with no wa. You can do that. Tamam. Any questions on this one? Because this is a jumla fi'aliyah. The khabar is a jumla fi'aliyah. The khabar is a jumla fi'aliyah. Now the khabar can also be jumla ismiyah. This is not as common, right, but it does happen. Right, so I can say, and sometimes they're kind of weird in regards to English because we don't speak like that too often. Right, I'm going to erase this if it's okay. It's going to come again. We have practice with Surah al-Rahman, inshallah. Okay. So Zaydun, right. Huwa tawilun. Zaydun maluhu kathirun. Just a few examples. Right. So how do we break it down? Right. First, the first word is always, if it's a noun, it's always what? Mubtada. Good. Once you see a mubtada, you need what to finish the sentence? Khabar, right? You come to a pronoun. Now, I don't want to implore any politics, but we have this no one left behind, right? Obama plan, right? No one left behind. So everything has to have a role. You can't just have one word just floating in the wind. So everything has to have a role. So if I make this khabar, what happens? I say, okay, Zayd, mubtada, next word must be khabar. If I just took it like that, what happens? Then tawil, sad and all alone, right? So tawil is left behind, and no one left behind, right? So I have to look at this as a whole. I have to look at this with the possibility, knowing that khabar can be a sentence. So whenever I come across the mubtada, okay, boom, I got my mubtada. Easy. Mubtada is easy, right? Khabar, now I have to think bigger. Right? It could be one word, it could be a whole sentence. Right? It could be jar majroor, it could be, right, the dharf. Right? So here, what do you plan? What do you perceive that the khabar is going to be? Huwa tawilun, the whole sentence, right? But okay, so if we're considering this a whole sentence separate from the mubtada, then is the first word of this new sentence a noun or a verb? Same process.
No.
It's a noun, right? What kind of noun?
No.
It's a pronoun, mubtada. Right. Right. Now I need a khabar for this mubtada, which is tawil. Right. These two become jumla ismiya, and that becomes the khabar of Zayd. Right. And then that becomes a bigger jumla ismiya. Right. So, but the reason why this is not so easy for English-speaking people is because we don't speak like this. Zayd, he is tall. Right? And even in Arabic, you wouldn't translate it as Zayd, he is tall. You would say Zayd is tall, but there's an extra emphasis here. Right? Zayd, he's the one who's tall. Right? So there's an emphasis on it is Zayd as opposed to other people. He's the tall one. Right? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Right? هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. He, Allah, is one. So there's a subtle meaning there that doesn't translate very well. Right? And if someone were to translate the Qur'an into English and keeping in mind all the subtleties, you wouldn't read it. It would either be very difficult to read or it would be like 15 volumes, right? And that's not possible. That's why it's so important to have some introduction to Arabic. All right, so let's try the next one. The problem is we haven't done phrases. Has anyone here done phrases? I know you've done. Anyone here done phrases? Have you taken phrases? Mudaf, mudaf ilayh, ism ishara. Shamir, have you taken phrases before? The 5 types of phrases. Mudaf, mudaf ilayh. Anything that sound familiar? Okay, fine. So the first word, what do I put? Mubtada. We need to get some coffee for the men side. All right, mubtada. What do I notice automatically?
There's a sentence after it.
Yeah, well, there's more than one word, right, after it. So something's going on. Right? So either there's going to be more than one khabar, right, or the khabar is going to be a sentence. So if I had, for instance, right, right, so here, like if the name of Allah here is the mubtada, right, and I know I have 2 words after it, and this is where vocabulary helps, because knowing what it means will definitely help you analyze the sentence. Right, so this would be the khabar al-awwal, and this would be khabar al-thani. And you'll see in some books they'll translate it as most forgiving, comma, most merciful, or you'll see most forgiving and most merciful. They'd put their own and in there, but Arabic doesn't need it. Right. So instead of being hasty to jump to say that it's a khabar, we have to think about both. Right? And then once we we see both, we have to decide. Because it could be a whole sentence. Right, so maluhu, what does maluhu mean? What is mal? Wealth. Good. Right, what is huwa? Right, what is who? His wealth. And so that's a phrase called the possessive phrase. First part is called mudaf. The second part, the pronoun, is called mudaf ilayhi. Mudaf ilayhi is always majroor. Right? Obviously you won't see it because it's a pronoun. Right? But this becomes what? And this is the important part. I know you know. These guys wake up. What is his wealth here? What does that mean? Mubtada. Good. Right? Because it's a noun, right? Wealth is a noun. It's not a verb. And we know that's because there's more than one word here. We're working with khabar as a sentence. And that's the subject matter, so it's not like a murder mystery. So, right, this together is the mubtada. Right, and that just, we haven't done phrases. We should, even though it's not in the book specifically, we should have a section. We'll take time to do it. Phrases are not sentences, but they can make up a part of a sentence. So you can have a phrase that's the fa'il, a phrase that's the mubtada, a phrase that's the khabar. Right, I can say, this book is green. So this book is a phrase. Right, so if this is the mubtada, what's the next word? Khabar. Okay, I need one volunteer from the sleepy side. Anyone? Don't be afraid. Okay. Yeah, no, not for that. I want you to read the sentence with all the vowels. Zayd is already done for you. From the beginning. Zaydun. Zaydun ma. Maluhu. Kathi. Don't be shy. You're right. Kathi. Ruan. Right? Good. Why did you say maluhu instead of malahu and malihi? Okay. So why did you say maluhu instead of malahu? Everything in Arabic is why. You have to have a why. Because it's the mubtada, and all mubtada are marfu'. Good. Right. So maluhu. Right. لا يغني عنه ماله وما كسب. It's the fa'il of لا يغني. Right, so again, another example. Right, this is jumla, right, ismiya, right, and that becomes right, the khabar of Zayd. How would you translate it? Anyone? Zayd, his wealth is a lot. Yeah, I mean, you can edit it. Zayd's wealth is a lot, but it has an extra emphasis to it in Arabic. Any questions on that? On the khabar? No? Good? Straightforward? Okay. Let's go back to... Right, so there's some extra rules that we haven't really taken yet. The khabar, right? The mubtada, the subject. Generally, majority of the time, it is a definite noun. A definite noun, which would mostly be either a name or signified by alif lam. Right, so al-baytu qadimun, the house is old. The house is old. Right, rarely you'll see something that's a house is old. Right, but it is possible, but it's not the norm. Okay, the khabar, however, is it gives news about the subject, and is generally an indefinite noun. So generally it'll have a tanween. Right? So we've seen here that, right, huwa is huwa, right? Huwa tawilun is a sentence. Right? Huwa is a mubtada. Is that definite noun? Is huwa definite noun? Does it talk about a specific person, place, or thing? Yeah. Yes. Right? So actually, the pronouns are more definite than regular nouns. Right? Tawilun, is that a definite noun or indefinite noun? Indefinite. Right? So generally, the khabar is indefinite. The mubtada is definite. Okay. And they have to match. Right, which I want to bring to you from another text. Right, so there are essentially, Allahu Akbar, right, two things where the mubtada and the khabar have to match in. Right, one of them having an exception, which actually okay. Right, so the first, right, they have to match it in plurality. Right, so if I have a singular, a dual, or a plural, right, mubtada, then I have to have a singular, dual, or plural khabar. So if I said, for instance, Zaydun Muslimun. What kind of word is Muslimun? Ism fa'il. Which form? Form 4. Right, good. Right, so Zayd is a Muslim. And generally, you'll have here, in between the mubtada and khabar, your verb to be. Is, are, right? So Zayd is Muslim. If it's dual, if I said Zayd, and again, if I want to add another mubtada, I'd have to say and. Right? Wa, right? Amrun Muslimani. Zayd and Amr are Muslim. I can't say Zayd wa Amr Muslim. Right? That's slang. You can't do that. Zayd wa Amr Muslimani, because this news is being for two people. Right? So here, right, we haven't done the atf. That's number 7 on the marfu' list. Those words which correspond to the other words. So Zayd is marfu' because it's the mubtada, and this word is just joined to it. It's attached. So the attached words take the same ruling. So both of those are the mubtada. Muslimani is the khabar. They match in dual. Right? If I were to say Ashabi Ashabun Nabi Salihun. This is another possessive phrase. Right? The companions of the Prophet are, right? So here again, your verb to be. Right? The companions of the Prophet, mubtada. So here we have a phrase that's a part of the sentence which makes the mubtada. Salihuna. Is it marfu', mansub, or majrur? Salihuna. Marfu'. Why? Because of the waw, right? Because that type of word, right? The jama' mudhakkar salam, the unbroken masculine plural. When it's marfu', you'll see it by letters, not by vowels. The vowel is not relevant here. So this becomes the khabar, right? So here, you have a plural, right? The companions of the Prophet. Ashab is the plural of sahib, right? One companion. If I said sahibun nabi, I'd have to say salihun. Right? Ashabun nabi, salihuna matches in. Right? So dual, singular, dual, and plural. Secondly, they have to match in gender. Right? So Zaydun muslimun. If I were to change it to feminine, I would say, right? Muslimatun. Right, sorry, username. It'd be really weird if there was somebody named Zaid in the class, because like every example in every book is Zaid. Right. So here, is this a fi'al or an ism? Is it a noun or a verb? Go ahead. Noun. Good. Why is there no tanween on it? Like Zaid, Zaydun. It's feminine. And it's a name. Good. So it's غير منصرف. This is mubtada. Is it singular or plural? Singular. Right, so here, muslimatun, is it singular or plural? Is it masculine or feminine? Feminine, right? So it has to. I can't say Zainabu muslimun. That would not match. They have to match in gender. Right? If it was dual, Zainabani muslimatani. Right? Actually, it comes in the hadith. Ayyu zananib hunna. Right? Which Zainab is it? And it's plural. Zayanib is the plural. Right? Muslimatun. They'd have to match in gender and in plurality. Or if I said, for instance, Fatima wa Maryam wa Aisha muslimatun. Right? Because then the mubtada is 3 people. So, there's one exception to this rule. Right? Specifically, the plural. Right? And I'll just erase the last one here. Ashabun Nabi Salihun. If the mubtada, so I'll just write it. If the mubtada is غير عاقل. What does غير mean? Not, right? What is عاقل? What is عقل? Intellect. What is ism fa'il of intellect? عاقل. No. So if like shukr means gratitude and shakir is the one who is grateful, and aql means intellect, aqil is the one who has intellect, right? So if the mubtada is a ghayru aqil, right, a non-rational thing, right? Some books you'll say it non-human, that it's not a living thing or not a human, right? Then, right, so if it's a ghayru aqil plural, you can use, right, you have 2 choices. One, you can use, as he mentions here, you can use the plural feminine, right? So if I said, for instance, kitab, right? Kitab is غير عاقل, right? It's not a living thing, a book, right? What's the plural of book? Books in Arabic? Kutubun. Good. Right. So if I said kutubun, right? Al-kutubu, because the mubtada generally is definite, right? The books, right? Are. Now my khabar, I can either use a feminine singular, right, or a feminine plural. Right, so I can say al-kutubu, right, qadimatun, right, the books are old, or I can say, which is more common, and how the Arabs generally speak, al-kutubu qadimatun, feminine singular. Right. The books are old. That's what you would translate it as. Right. Are old. Right. The Arabs wouldn't say al-kutubu qadimuna or qidamun or qudama'u. Right. They wouldn't use a masculine. Right. They would either use the feminine singular or the feminine plural. Right. So you see al-baqiyatu salihatu. Right. In the Quran. But you can say al-baqiyatu as-salihah. But this only applies to non-rational things, right? So if I said, for instance, ar-rijalu, right, the men, I can't say qadimatun. I have to say the plural of qadim, masculine, qudama or qidam or qadimuna. Right? But if it's a non-living thing, a book or tree, al-ashjaru hiya, right? Al-ashjaru qadimatun. Right? And we'll see it today in the surahs that we're going to practice. So that's the only exception. If the mubtada is a non-aqil, it's a non-rational thing, then the khabar can be a feminine singular, a singular feminine. If you remember the sentence before, Zaydun huwa tawilun. Zaydun huwa tawilun. Right? So if the khabar is going to be a sentence, I would say al-kutubu hiya qadimatun, because hiya is feminine singular. Right? And hiya can be translated as she, it, or they. And because of this rule, and because hiya can be used for things that are pairs or for plurals. So if you're talking about, like, for instance, ears, you would say hiya, right? You would say hiya, right? And anything that comes in pairs, just as a note, right, is feminine. Anything comes in pairs is feminine. And so ayn, right, eyes, is two, right? Whereas lisan is masculine. There's only one, right? So, any questions on that? Right, so they have to match in plurality, singular, dual, or plural. The khabar has to match the mubtada exactly. If the mubtada is plural, the khabar has to be plural. Right? They have to match in gender as well. Right? Either masculine, masculine, feminine, feminine, and so forth. The only exception is if the khabar, or if the mubtada is a ghayru aqil, a non-living thing, right? Then, and it's plural, then you can use a feminine singular to describe it. Right? You can use a feminine singular to describe it, and that applies to all methods of describing the subject. Right? So if I said al-kutubu tukhraqu, the books were ripped. Right? And tukhraq is hiya, right? It's hiya, she. So, al-kutubu qadimat, right? The books have arrived. Qadimat, here. I wouldn't say al-kutubu qadimu, they, right? Whom, right? They, those three men, or those three masculine things. So al-kutubu idha as-suhufu nushirat. As-suhufu nushirat. We'll see a lot of examples of this in a moment. If I can just get here safely. So just before we jump into the actual practice, here, does anyone have one? Okay, so did you get one? Yeah, so if you see in the middle, you have the detached pronouns, right? So if ever your pronoun is a mubtada, it's going to look like that. Hum, hiya, huwa, huma, hum, hiya, huma, hunna, anta, antuma, antum, anti, antuma, antuna, ana, nahnu. Right? And the translations are there. Right, so if I said, for instance, hunna muslimatun, they are Muslim women, or hum muslimuna, so they still have to match in plural and masculine. Right. However, the attached pronouns, right, you'll see them only in certain circumstances. We'll revisit it when we talk about next week, about those things which are added to a jumla ismiyah. Like inna and its sisters, and kana and its sisters, and dhanna and its sisters. Right? You would say innahu kana tawwaba. Innahu. But how is it written? Is it ha, waw, or just the ha? Anyone can recall? Just the ha. Right? So that's an attached pronoun. And you wouldn't say inna huwa. Right? Same thing with maluhu. Right? Maluhu. You wouldn't say malu huwa. So those are attached pronouns. They'll come as we go, and inshallah we'll have a class on the. We'll take some time in the next class for the phrases, the 5 phrases. What we want to do is just save the last 30 minutes for some practice. Right. Can everyone see that? Is it big enough? If you want to move closer, you can. Right. It's Surah al-Rahman, the beginning of Surah al-Rahman. Right, so what we want to do, just quickly, and we'll try to do this as much as we can together. that we want to identify where's the subject, what is the predicate, right? If it's a jumla fi'aliyya, where's the doer? Because every jumla fi'aliyya has to have a doer. Some even have an object, so we can look for that. Right? And then if we say that something is a fa'il, that it's marfu', what's the sign that it's marfu'? We want to really focus on that. Right? Understanding why is something marfu'. What is this, the alama? Right? We'll see throughout that the pronouns. Right? And then vocab is really important. Right? If you really can just build up your vocab, much of the grammar will just fall into place after that. Tamam. So he says, al-Rahmanu. Right? It starts with one word. Right? Verses aren't according to sentences. Right? They are not according to sentences. Right? So al-Rahmanu, the sentence starts with a noun. Is the mubtada. Good. Allama al-Qur'ana. Where's the khabar of that mubtada? We have to. Yeah. Okay. So what is allama? Verb. What's the doer? Huwa, which is hidden inside. Right. Al-Qur'ana is mansub. Why? It's the maf'ul. Good. Right. Allama, form 2. Right. Allama yu'allimu, ta'aleem, to teach. Right. Translate. How do you translate?
Al-Rahman, the most merciful, taught the Quran.
Good. Taught, past tense. Good. Taught the Quran. Khalaqa al-insan. Right. How would you translate that? He created mankind. Good. Right. So we mentioned before that if it's a singular verb, like khalaqa, right, either masculine or feminine, khalaqat, right, khalaqa, then the doer can either be inside or zahir afterwards. So how do you know that insan is not the doer? Because it's mansub. All doers are marfu'. Right? So khalaqa, so we know that the huwa inside must be the doer. So he created, right, mankind, all going back to al-Rahman. These are all khabar. Right? Allamahu al-bayan. This is slightly tricky. Allamahu, attached pronoun. Right? And throughout the class I'll try to give you shortcuts. Anytime ever in your life you see an attached pronoun at the end of a verb, right, that is the maf'ul, as an object. Right? Darabtuhu, right? Ra'aytuha, right? Nasartuhum, right? That whom, that ha, that who, all that is the object. Because if you're having an object after a verb that is a pronoun, it has to be attached to the verb. You can't say daraba Zaydun huwa. Zayd hit him. You can't say that. You have to say darabahu Zaydun. Right? So allamahu al-bayan. Who's the fa'il of allama? Huwa. Right? And going back to al-Rahman. Right? Right? So he taught it. Right? Al-insan. He taught him, meaning the human. Right? Al-bayan. How to express themselves. Okay, tamam. So that's the last khabar. So allamahu, allama, fi'al, huwa is the fa'il inside it. The hu that's attached at the end is the first object. Al-bayana is the second object. You can have more than one object. Okay, so just to recap, the most merciful taught the Quran, created mankind, taught it or taught him or taught mankind, right, to express themselves. Next sentence. Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru, yes, right? Sorry. Bihusbanin. Bihusbanin. What's the mubtada? If there is a mubtada. Ash-shamsu and al-qamaru. Good. What's the khabar? Bihusban. Which of the 4 types of khabar was that? Harf jar and majrur. Harf jar. B is a harf jar. Right? Husbanin are in. They have a reckoned setup. Right? They are arranged by time. They are. Tamam. So he says, "Wan najmu So if you notice, all of the mubtada so far are definite nouns. Al-Rahmanu, al-Shajaru, al-Shamsu, al-Qamaru. And now he's saying, وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ. Both marfu'. They are mubtada. Right. Sorry? No, this is a new sentence. New sentence, because the khabar is different. Yeah, so the shajar is attached to najam, right, in this sentence. In the previous sentence, qamar is attached to shams. So there are two separate sentences. And so shams, ash-shamsu wal qamaru, shams comes first. It's the mubtada. Qamar just follows it because it's attached. Right, and here, the next sentence, وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ, the stars and the trees, يَسْجُدَانِ. What does yasjudani mean? Are prostrating. Is it a noun or a verb? A verb. Which verb? What kind of verb? Fi'al mudari'. Good. Who's the fa'il of this fi'al mudari'? Huma. Good. Dual. Right? They. Right? Which obviously refers back to an-najm wa shajar, right? But the fa'il is only that which is in the verb or after. Right? So we would say that the fa'il is huma, right? And then, right, the verb yasjudani and its fa'il huma together make jumla fi'aliyya, which becomes what? The khabar of wan-najm wa shajar. So how do you translate it?
The star and the tree are prostrating.
Are prostrating. Good. Right. Here, this is these nouns are ism jins. They're categorical. So stars in general, stars and right, trees are prostrating. Right. It's like, for instance, you go like I bought milk. Right. You don't say the milk or a milk. You just say milk. Like same thing with rice. Right. You don't say. You could say like I want the rice, but you don't necessarily have to. Right. I bought rice. I bought flour. I bought wheat. Right. So some words, they're categories. Right. If you say shajarah with a ta, that means one tree. And this happens in Surah Al-Baqarah, for those who've memorized Surah Al-Baqarah. Right. Inna al-baqara tashabaha alayna. There's no ta. Inna al-baqara tashabaha alayna. Cows are confusing. Just cows in general are confusing. Right. Whereas, right, verily Allah has commanded you to slaughter baqaratan, a cow. So the ta makes it singular. Right. So stars and the trees are prostrating. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. This is tricky. Right. The first word is a noun, but it's mansoob. Right. So I'll just tell you the answer. We mentioned that the fa'il can never be before the verb, right? It has to be in it or after it. But the object can be before the verb. The object can come before the verb, right? وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ, right? And the moon, we determined its time, right? We determined its cycle. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا, and the sky, he raised it. Right? So again, we have, right, رَفَعَهَا, an attached pronoun. The ha referring back to sama. Sama is feminine. Anything that has the hamza mamduda on the end is feminine. Right? And the skies, we raised it. So it's as if you're saying rafa'a sama'a, but this has more eloquence to it. Right? وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. What is the doer of wada'a? وَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. Huwa. Why not al-mizan? It's not marfu'. Good. Right. So how would you translate this? Right. Rafa'a means what? To raise, right? To lift something. Right. And wada'a means to put something down, right? It's the opposite. That's where you get tawadu', form 6, right? To put yourself down. It's humility. Right? مَنْ تَوَاضَعَ لِلَّهِ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ. Whoever puts themselves down for Allah, Allah raises them. Right? وَمَنْ تَكَبَّرَ وَضَعَهُ اللَّهُ. And whoever is arrogant, Allah abases them, puts them down. Right? So the sky, He raised it and placed, right? And placed the balance, the mizan. It was mizan, wazn. Wazn is what you weigh something with. But nobody wants to say mew, right? Unless you're a cat. Right? أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا الْمِيزَانَ. Right? أَلَّا was an la, so that you do not. Right? Right? لَا تَطْغَوْا. So n, we've already taken n before. The n is one of the huruf that causes what type of inflection? Nawasib. It's one of the nawasib. It causes the word after it to be mansub. Right? أَرَدْتُ أَنْ أُسَافِرَ. Usafira. I wanted to travel. Right? So أَنْ لَا تَطْغَوْا. It was تَطْغَوْنَا. تَطْغَوْنَا. طغيان means to be, so that you all do not transgress fil mizan, in the balance. Right, so what is the sign, what is the inflection of la tatghaw? La tatghaw.
The omission of the noon.
The noon fell off. Good, right? Because it was supposed to be tatghawna, plural. Right, so the noon falls off when it's mansub or when it's majzoom. Right, here we know that it's mansub because of the n before it. Right, so the reason for all of that beforehand, so that you do not transgress in the balance. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ. So this is a command. Right, أَفْعِلُوا أَقِيمُوا. It was أَقْوِمُوا. Right, أَقْوِمُوا. Right, establish al-wazna, the balance, bil-qisti. Right, so right, with justice. وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ. لَا تُخْسِرُوا is what? What state is it in? Majzoom. Why? It's a negative command. Good. And so the noon falls off. لا تخسرون. But if you're commanding someone, لا تخسروا, لا تطغوا. Right, the noon falls off. الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام. Again, the maf'ul came first. Right, and the earth, وضعها. What does وضعها mean? He put it what? He put it down. Right? Wada' means to be down. Right? He put it down or established it. Lil anam is for the creation. Anam is kullu ma yanam. Right? Kullu ma yanam. Everything that sleeps. Right? Anam. It's one of the root words of anam. Right? So the earth, He laid it down for the creation. He laid it down. So the door is huwa. Right, so that's pretty much what we wanted to cover. The next one you'll see that says fiha fakihatun. Right, fiha fakihatun. Anytime you have a harf jar and a majroor that come first, right, then the khabar comes before the mubtada. Right, the fiha is the khabar. So it's as if you said fakihatun fiha. And that's one of the rare situations where the mubtada can be indefinite, as if it's after if it switches. Right? I say lillahi alhamd. Right? It's the same exact sentence as alhamdulillah. It has obviously different nuanced meanings in it, but it's still lillahi is the khabar and alhamdu is the mubtada. Because you can't start a sentence with harf jar. It has to be either a noun or a verb. So it's a switched order. Tamam. The next we want to practice slightly different style of surah. Right? And the different surahs, they have different styles, even grammatically. Right? You'll have some that are very short verses, and some that are very long verses, some that are more story-based, and others that are more subject-based. Right, so this is a story, and stories tend to be different in the Arabic, and sometimes easier and sometimes much harder for the student. Right, so same objectives, right? He says, right, وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ. So part of this we want to understand is to use the what forms of the verbs are we talking about here? So what is tawajjaha? Is it a noun or a verb? Lamma is when, right? Verb, good. What form is it? Form 5. Does anyone have their dictionary with them? You guys have it? Okay. Let's look up tawajjaha. Right, so what is form 5? What is the form that we put on that chart? Right, tafa'ala, right? Tafa'ala. Right, so what letters are extra in tafa'ala? The ta and the extra ayn. Good. Right, very good. Right, so fa, ayn, lam are the root letters. Right, here we have 2 ayns, so one of them is extra and the ta is extra. So what are the root letters of tawajjaha? If we remove all the extras, remove the ta and we remove the extra middle letter. Wa, jim, and ha. Good. Right, what does wajh mean? Face. Right, so what does tawajjaha mean? To face something, right? Who is the doer? You know the story. Who's the actual doer? Because there's no Musa in or after huwa, right? So when he turned, right? So tawajjuh is turning, right? Sidi Ahmad al-Zarruq, he defined tasawwuf, which is the same form, spirituality, to be sidq al-tawajjuh ila Allah, right? To turn to Allah with absolute sincerity, in truth, right? Right, tilqa'a Madyana. Right, tilqa is in the direction of, so it's an adverb actually. Right, in the direction of Madyana. Madyan, it's majroor. Why is it not a kasra or a tanween? Why is there no kasra or tanween? It's a place. It's the name of a specific place. Right, so it's a it's Adam, it's the name of a place, and it's feminine, right, because places are feminine. Right, Tanqa'a Madyana, Qala, who's the doer? Qala, huwa. Right, so same huwa, this he that we're talking about. Right, obviously, it's about Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Right, Qala, Asa Rabbi an yahdiyani sawa as-sabil. Asa, perhaps. Right, asa is one of those verbs of raja, of hope. Right, asa Rabbi, perhaps my Lord. An yahdiyani, right, perhaps that my Lord, yahdiyani, will guide me. Right. The ni at the end is the pronoun, attached pronoun. It's the maf'ul. But why is it yahdiya? Right. Hada yahdi. Right. Yahdiya. Why is it mansub? Because of the n before it. So n is a harf nasib. Right? N yahdi. Anytime you have a verb after n, you have to make it mansub. Right? Either by the fatha or dropping off the noons. Right? Perhaps my Lord will guide me. Right? Sawa as-sabil, the straight path. Right? And then again, walamma, and when. Right? So when he turned toward Madyan, he said, perhaps my Lord will guide me the straight path. Sawa means something that is sawi, equal or straight. And then it says, walamma warada. What does warada mean? Roses? Occurred. Okay. Let's see what Shaykh Hans says. Warada. So which form is it? Which form is warada? Yeah, so it's a form 1, yeah. Daraba warada yaridu. What does it mean?
To come, to arrive.
To arrive, right? Well, what else does it say in the brackets?
Be said in the book.
Yeah, so that's the mawrud, right? Warada is a type of is what the word they would use for narrations, right? Similarly, like awrad. Yeah. But warada is usually used for water, right? That's why the watering hole is called the mawrid. Actually, there's an Arabic dictionary called the mawrid as well, right? Is that the mawrid? Okay, I thought it was. Right, so warada means to come to water. Right? It's used metaphorically to come to other things. Right, so walamma warada. Who's the doer of warada? Huwa, right? So the same he, this person we're talking about, Musa alayhi salam. So when he arrived, ma'a Madyana, at the water of Madian, wajada. Wajada. What is wajada? To find, right? So how do you translate wajada here? Right. He found. Good. So when he arrived at the water of Madian, he found alayhi, upon it, ummatan. What's ummah? Yeah, it means a nation, but a group of, right, a community or a group. Right? Ummatan minan nas, a group of the people. Right? Yasquna. What does yasquna mean? Look it up. What are the root words? Yaf'aluna. Something happened there. Something's missing. So whenever you're missing a letter, first thing that should come to your mind is what kind of letter? What kind of letters fall off? Weak letters. Good. Right. So yaf'aluna, yasquna. Something's missing. Right. Let's see who can find it. Right. Found it? Not yet? So there's two main letters you should look for. So it's either sin qaf, wow, or sin qaf, ya. Right. Can you find it? Oh, you don't have it. Okay. I would say share with someone else, but regulations of social distancing don't allow it. Oh, you have? Oh, alhamdulillah. What is it? Sin qaf, ya. Saqyun. Right. What does it mean?
Either to give someone a drink or to water.
Right. Okay. To quench thirst. Okay. To give someone drink. Is that form 1 or form 4? What? Form 1. What does it form 1 say? To give to drink. Or? To water. What is it? What else does it say?
To irrigate.
To irrigate.
Yeah.
That's all?
No, there's to dip, scoop, to draw.
To draw water. Good. Right. So sometimes you have to dig what fits in this context. Right. So, right, to draw out water. Right. To draw water. Now you have to apply it to the tense. So it's a mudari', and you have to apply it to its pronoun. So how do you apply to drink, to draw out water? Right, to yasquna in this verse. So if we read back, right, when he came to the water of Madian, he found upon it a group of the people, yasquna, drawing water. Good, right? Mudari', drawing water. Right? They draw. Right? They are drawing water. You don't have to. You can omit the whatever sounds best in English. Right? So he found a group of people drinking, or taking from the water. وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ, and he found other than them, min duniyam, from other than them, imra'ataini. What is imra'ataini? Two women. Why is it marfu' or is it mansub? Right, taini, because of taini. But why is it mansub? What is its role in this sentence? The maf'ul of? Of? No, min duniyam is not a verb. Wajada. Good, right? It's always easiest to ascribe it to the most recent, unless it doesn't fit. Right, so he found, from other than those people, or besides those people, the people that were drawing the water, right, 2 women. And what were they doing? Tudhudan. If you study Bab al-Zakat, Dhawd is a group of sheep. Right? Tudhudani. What's the doer of Tudhudani? Tudhudani. So Yadhudu, Yadhudani, Yadhuduna, Tadhudu, Tadhudani, Yadhudna. So what is Tadhudani? Dual. Dual, masculine or feminine? Feminine, right? So it corresponds, right? There's a constant theme of correspondence. So 2 women, Tudhudani, right? Tudhudani means keeping their sheep in one place. You have to keep them like kind of gathering them up, right? Let's just hurry a little bit. Qala, he said, who is he? The group of people, the 2 women, or the guy who's traveling to Madian? Alayhi salam. Which, right? So sometimes you have to keep track of the pronoun because things can switch. Right? Qala, he said, ma khatabukuma. Right? Kuma. On your papers, what does kuma represent? Antuma. Good, right? So khatabukuma is how you would say, what's up with you guys? Right? Khatab, it's an expression in Arabic. Ma khatabukuma. What is your, right, deal, pretty much. Okay, so he said, what is your deal? Who is he speaking to? The 2 women, right? The 2 women who are Tudhudani, right? Who keeping there, and they're obviously not drinking, taking from the water. Right? They're obviously waiting. So he's asking, what's wrong? What's up with you? Qalata. Who is the doer of qalata? Right, so qala, qala, qalu, qalat, qalata. Right, those 2 women, they said, right? La nasqi. What is nasqi? La nasqi. What does that mean? We are not? Go ahead. No. What was yasquna mean before, just now? Yeah, so la nasqi means we are not drawing water, or we won't draw water. So either present or future. Right? Hatta yustira ri'a'u. Right? Until the shepherds go away, pretty much. So if you notice the hatta, after hatta it's yustira with a fatha. Right? Because after in hatta there's n. N is assumed inside it. What form is yustir? Yusdiru? Form 4, right? Right? Asdara yusdiru, form 4. Right? Hatta yusdira ri'a'u. So who's the doer of yusdir? Ri'a'u, right? The shepherds, right? And the other people that are there. Right? So we can't take water until the shepherds yusdir, right? They go away. Right? Wa abuna. We've taken this. This is one of the 5 nouns. Abu, right? It is. What is it in this sentence? So the wa indicates to a new sentence, right? So abuna is the first word. It's mubtada. It's marfu'. And what's the sign that is marfu'? The waw, right? And our father, right? Shaykhun kabirun. 2 khabars. And our father is, or actually, you would say that, right, this is a descriptive phrase, right? An old sheikh, a very old person. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا. فَسَقَى. Then. Saqa. What is saqa? He drew out water. Right? Well, what form is it? It looks really weird to me. Form 1. What's up with that last letter? It's a weak letter. Right? Saqaya became saqa. Right? Saqaya. Like qawala became qala. Saqaya, saqa. Right? So he drew water, right? Lahuma, for them. Right? Right? Thumma, then tawalla. What form is tawalla? And what are the root letters? Form 5, okay. Root letters? Mm-hmm. What were the root letters for saqa that ended in the same kind of thingy? Yeah, wow, lam, ya. So look it up. Wow, lam, ya, form 5. Right, and this is the same word for wilaya, sainthood. Right, but tawalla has a lot of meanings though. But wali, right, has a lot of meanings as well. Right, form 5 means, let's give a moment for those who are not just doing a search. Tisk squared. Tisk. Okay. Keep going. Right, so in the context here, right, so he drew out water for them, then he. What is?
It says turn away.
Turn away, right? So turn away, good, right? So then he turned away. ثم تولى. Right? إلى الظل, to the shade. To the shade. Right. فقال, then he said, right? Rabbi, right? It's actually Rabbi, and you'll see sometimes in the Qur'an the ya is dropped off, right? Like وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدوني, but it ends in just the kasra, يعبدون. Right? For the saj'a, for the Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqirun. It's a long sentence. We haven't done inna and its sisters, right? And so if you took out the inna, it would be ana lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqirun. Ana faqirun. Ana faqirun. Mubtada khabar. Right? Faqirun for what? Lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin. Right? Of the good that you've sent down to me. You have sent down to me. Which form is anzalta? Form? Form 7 would have a kasra on the hamza before the noon, right? And then it would be in fa'ala, right? In fa'ala. One of the, which one? What is your makeup answer? Form 4, right? Anzala. So what is the root letters? Nazala. Just as a quick note, form 7, any word that has the first root letter of noon can never be on form 7. It can never be on form 7, like nafa'a, right? You can't say in nafa'a, right? Because then there's just too many noons, right? In nazada, you can't. Right? So form 7 would only have verbs that the root letter is other than the noon. And let's just finish the. Right, yeah, so that's the last verse. Did anyone have a chance to do Surah At-Takwir from last week? Anyone try it? Everyone forgot? Happily forgot? Yeah, that's okay. And one of the root letters of insan is nisyan. It comes from the same root letters. Okay. To forget. Right, so we'll just do this as a take-home. So up to verse 15. So just write it in your books, right, for next week. Right, from Surah At-Takwir, from verse 1 to verse 15. Right. This is a great practice of the majhul verb. So to revise the majhul verb, the verb whose doer is unknown. Right, so you'll have to find, instead of finding the fa'il, you'd have to find the substitute fa'il. Essentially the same. Right. But what we want you to do is, for the sake of vocabulary, is to look up all the nouns as well as the verbs. Right. So for the nouns, you should know the singular and the plural. Right. The singular and the plural. Shamsun, shumusun. Right. And for a few of them, it's important to note whether it's masculine or feminine, because shams, ard, Right? These sama, all these words are feminine, but they don't look it. There's no ta or anything on the end. That's why إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. Right? Hiya again, right? Referring back to a feminine. Right? But an-nujumu, right? An-nujum is a plural that is not a non-rational plural. So what is the pronoun that comes after it, that refers to it in the verse? إِذَا النُّجُومُ إِنْكَدَرَتْ. إِنْكَدَرَتْ form 7, right? إِنْكَدَرَتْ. That at the end is singular feminine, right? So singular feminine ascribe or describing a non-rational plural. So that's how the Arabs speak. They wouldn't use it any other way, generally. Right? Like same thing. إِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. Hiya. Right? They. Right? So for all these words, so nujum is already plural here, so find the singular. We did it in Surah al-Rahman, al-Najm. Right? Jibal is plural, so what's the singular? Right? What is ishar? Right? Al-wuhush is plural. Right? What is the singular? Bihar is plural. Nufus is plural. Maw'udah. What kind of word is al-maw'udah? Ism maf'ul. Very good. Feminine. Ism maf'ul. So what are the root letters? Maf'ulun. Maw'udatun. Maf'ulatun. Maw'udatun. Maw'udatun. Maf'ulatun. Wow. Hamza. Dal. Good. Right. So that's the process, right? Find out the form, remove all the extras, find the root letters, right? Look it up, get the meaning, and then apply it back to the tense, the pronoun, right, and its context in the sentence, right? So the aims are here, right? We'll try to. I guess you don't really need to print it out, right? Just on your mushaf at home, from verse 1 to 15, right? Find all of the nouns and all of the verbs and their meanings, and attempt a translation to translate from verse 1 to verse 15. And so after you gather your vocab, you can go back, right? إِذَا means when, right? So إِذَا means when, so you can use that. And فَلَا أُقْسِمُ means أُقْسِمُ, I swear. The la is for emphasis. Right? It's not a negation. With which, yeah. Yeah.
And the second question, I don't think a lot of students heard like 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the test, because they cut the live stream.
Yeah.
So when is the test happening?
Yeah. So today is what? November 10th. Yeah. So let's give like a suitable amount of time for everyone. So let's say 2 weeks from now. Is that suitable enough time to do a test? Right, mostly just on the core principles of what we've done, right? The i'rab, the different types of i'rab, right? And then mubtada and khabar will enter. Next week's class most likely won't enter into this, even though it's related to mubtada and khabar. So mubtada, khabar, fa'il, naib, fa'il, very important. Right? But hopefully we'll try to do mostly like application, inshallah. But really try to do this. So the nouns, singular and plural, verbs, their meaning, what form they are, right? And then attempt a translation. Once you're done the translation, obviously you're going to bring it to class, but check it. Right? Look at another translation and compare. Right? But don't use the other translation while you're doing it. So after the fact, then compare, but don't change it, inshallah. Right. Tamam. Any questions? Pretty straightforward, right? So, وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله كل خيرا. Next week is very practical, and we'll give you a lot of keys to the Qur'an, inshaAllah ta'ala. we'll try to do the phrases as well next week.